Hey, what's up guys, Disney Nuts. I'm here in front of the topiaries of Anna and Elsa, and I'm going to show you how I got this shot. Hey, what's up guys, Disney Nuts here to show you another photo of how did I take that. And this time we're actually going to be playing something really cool, which is actually having a really short depth of field. So for example, you can see my fingers here where everything is nice and sharp, but everything behind the fingers is out of focus. So that's how we took this shot. Okay, pretty cool, right? Okay, so there's a couple of things that need to happen in order to get this photo to look like this. And the first thing is the lens. The lens needs to be able to have a really high aperture. And when I talk high aperture, I mean that the number has to be able to become really low. 1.8, 2.8, like what I have on this camera right here. And that will allow us to shorten the depth of field on the photo. And what's depth of field? Depth of field is the amount of distance that is in the photo which is in focus. For example, when you're shooting something like a landscape, or something that has a lot of depth that you want to include into the image, usually bring your f-stop number up, which means that you bring your aperture down, and that way you get everything in focus really nice, and everything looks really good all the way to the back. With some of the photos I've taken are been like f8 stuff like that, but for stuff like this we're actually going to go backwards, which means we're going to go with a higher f-stop, which means a lower number. So in case here we have a 2.8 lens, and that allows me to get that really short depth of field, which means that what's in focus is in the front, and right after it, it's the stuff that's out of focus. Eventually, the smaller the number, the harder it is to have that depth of field and been able to focus. So it's a tricky thing, but once you get it locked down, you'll see it's pretty easy. Okay, so again, having a 2.8 like I have here, if I go ahead and put my fingers in the front, you'll see the camera is going to focus on the fingers, but the back part is going to be all out of focus. Okay, so that's a short depth of field. Okay, so that's the first thing, the lens. And we're going to lock it down to 2.8, which means we can shoot at aperture priority or manual, but we need to make sure that the aperture is the smallest number possible, in this case 2.8. The second thing that we need to do is to make sure that our focus points is on what we want the camera to focus on. And I know it sounds basic, but when you have like a photo like this, where Elsa's fingers on the left side of the photo or on the right side, depending how it is, you want to be able the camera to look at that and to focus on that specific pot. Okay, so make sure that you use the appropriate type of focus. In this case, I'm using spot focus, which I point a little red dot right on top of Elsa's fingers and shoot that. The third thing is actually the focus modes, and the cameras have a couple of focus modes, which I've explained before. The first one being one stop, which means when you press the camera shutter button halfway, the camera will go ahead and focus, but it will not focus again until you release the button or take the photo. The second mode that it has is actually the al servo mode, which means that as you press it halfway through, the camera is going to continue to focus on whatever it sees. That mode I actually use for parades, and I use for castle shows and stuff like that, because everything's moving around, you know, stuff is coming at you if you got the parade coming at you. So that's one of the modes that I use. But in this case, we want to put it to one shot, which means I'm going to hit the button halfway, I'm going to point towards Elsa's fingers, and then I'm going to move to the right, back to the center, and I'm going to zoom out or zoom in, whatever you want to do. But that way the camera is already locked into her fingers, it's already focused onto her fingers, and when I back out, I can get the whole image of her, and I can do crop or whatever. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is actually, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to take the photo for you guys, so you can see what the settings are on the camera. Okay, let's go. Okay, now we got our shot. Let's go and edit it on the computer, see how it looks. Okay, so here's the file up here in Lightroom, and let's go ahead and edit it. As you can see, what I was talking about, you see where I actually did the focus right on the tip of the finger, which is where I did my focus point, and I made sure that this was in focus, okay? And then I zoomed out and got the whole image. I usually like to zoom out on photos like this because even though at the end our result was something which is cropped, I'll never know if I'm going to use it in the future, so it's always best to you know, save this extra space because you never know if you're going to use it in the future. Okay, so basic settings. If I can go here from the top to the bottom, usually bring down the highlights because it's during the day. Bring up the shadows, maybe not that much. Bring down the blacks. A little bit of exposure here. There we go. And let's go ahead and bring up the clarity. Just a touch, a little color. Again, remember this is a raw file, so it comes out just as it's seen in the camera. That's why it looks so bland. Let's put some sharpening. Leave that as it is, just a touch. And I want to make sure I turn on the lens profile, which will fix the corners. Okay, so nothing really much fancy here that I did on the edit, since it's basically a day shot. Basically, the image itself, it's pretty well. You know, everything's focused, everything looks good. So. Again, I just touch the exposure a little bit, just that way her face looks nice but not overblown. Okay, now next thing is the cropping. Here we go. So one thing that I like to use is actually the rule of 4/3, which are these lines here, and I like to put the finger touching one of those tips. That way, there you go, see, a little bit more. We go. So you see I got usually put the intersection of the lines on what I'm trying to focus. That can either be an eye or a head or a tip of the castle or something like that. There we go. Still looking good. So actually let's crop it a little more tight here. The tip of the finger again on the line. There we go. Now something I want to add here, since these are green topiaries, I want to bring out the green a little bit, so I'm going to scroll down here to my saturation, pop the green a little bit, maybe the blue, you know, get the sky a little bluer there a little bit. There we go. And then to kick it off, I am going to actually put some vinaigrette around the image so it focuses on the center, or at least on the dot. There we go. Yes, I'm going to do it. If I go too much, obviously it'll look like that, but just a tad so that the eye focuses on this. There we go. That's our image right there. Very simple. And that's the edit. Okay guys, so that's how I did this photo. Again, thanks for watching and thanks for following the account. Again, if you liked what you saw and you want more, please subscribe. On the bottom to the right there underneath the video, and hit the bell button so you get notified as soon as new videos come up. Feel free to comment, ask questions or stuff that you'd like to see on the channel, and I'll gladly put it on the list and hopefully get them out to you. Until then, keep editing those photos and stay awesome.